In this video we're going to look at the permissions functionality of .NET Nuke. Our main interest here is what you're allowed to do in terms of permissions for pages, but in order to understand that we first have to have a little look at what the administrator can do. So I'm going to log in as the admin, and now that I'm logged in, you'll notice up here in this top right hand corner amongst the common tasks these things are now underlined. We have roles, users, site, files, solutions, all sorts of things that we can access as the administrator that other users can't access. Let's look at users first. Here we've got a toolbar for working with users. If I click on all, you can see a list of all the users. Obviously there's not many. You may well have thousands because Viv wants to take people's details, add them in there and use them for sending broadcast emails. So you'll want to look at them in a paginated way and maybe go down to particular individuals alphabetically. You can also see who's online other than yourself and unauthorized and so forth. So there are various ways in which you can see who's doing what. Now you're not really going to do much with user accounts individually other than obviously add users in. You can add new user down here, you notice, as the administrator, or deleting people and so forth. What you're really more likely to work with is roles, and again you can't create these, the administrator creates these, but I wanted to show you what they are. We have administrators, that's built in. Registered users are built in. And subscribers are built in, but to be honest is not really very relevant. I could delete that one quite cheerfully. Subscribers is about the idea of subscribing to content that you may have to pay for or so forth. It doesn't really relate to what we're doing, certainly not at the moment, but I'll just leave it there. What I'm going to do, however, is add a new role that's perhaps more relevant to us. I'm just guessing at the kinds of roles we might have. So I'm going to add a stakeholders role name, and has access to the stakeholder sections of the site. Obviously you may not have those, you may have some equivalent. It's a public role, that means there's no payment involved in assigning people to roles. We're not going to use auto assignments because that would automatically assign any new user to the stakeholder role, and roles should be assigned from our point of view individually. There are advanced settings, and these are all about trial periods and money and all that. Again, not relevant to us, it's just a built-in part of the CMS. So we update that now, and we have a stakeholders group. And we can add users to the group. If we go back to users, let's look at all users, and let's go to manage the second user, Elise McMahon. And let's manage roles for this user, and what we're going to do is add this user to the stakeholders group. So now the user belongs in that group as well. Okay, I'm going to log out now. Those kind of tasks are very much the administrator tasks, but if I log in now as an author, as Sandra, this helps us now to understand what's going on when we look at permissions. So if I go into edit mode, well actually I don't even need to, I could just click on settings for the page. Let's go into page settings. If I look at this now, you see we have permissions here. These permissions were inherited, and at the point that we created them, stakeholders didn't exist, but look, stakeholders is now here inside the permissions, and we could now grant to this user specific permissions. Now already all users have permission, and unauthenticated users have permission to view this page. So we don't need to do anything special to allow them to view it. But if we wanted stakeholders to be able to edit this page, we could grant them the permission to do so. So as the author, you can't create roles, you can't assign users to roles, but what you can do is manage any content that you create, which user roles can see it. And it is far better to manage it by roles than to do this, which you can see you can actually add users down here. Don't do it on an individual user basis. Add roles, it makes it much easier to manage. Okay, I'll update that. So now the stakeholders have permissions to amend this page. You can also, and I don't recommend doing this, but just so that you're aware that you can do this, if I go to edit mode, we could, with this survey, change its settings so that it was only visible to a limited number of users. So if I unclick Inherit View Permissions from Page, and then unclick, let me see, actually I don't need to unclick anybody, nobody can view it now apart from my administrator, so now I want to click somebody. I'm going to say administrators and authors can see this module, and authors and administrators can edit it, and let's say that stakeholders can see it as well. So it's now a limited group of people who see this module. If I update that now, I'm one of that group, so I see it, but if I log out, you can see suddenly that small part of the page is no longer visible. You can do that, and if you occasionally need to, by all means do, but on the whole I think it can be very confusing to have parts of the website, parts of an individual page visible to some and not to others, and I would recommend instead breaking your website down into sections, like we've got home and section 2, maybe you'd have section 3 and section 4, and section 3 and section 4 would be visible only to subsets of users, and put anything private in there rather than getting into fine-grained permissions on an individual page. Okay, that's a quick overview of permissions using our content management system.